Hi, everyone. Welcome to Tech Talks. My name is Michael Bertoni, and I'm the founder and CEO of Philly Tech, and your host for Tech Talks. The show is every Wednesday at 12:30 p.m. So again, this show is dedicated to all the entrepreneurs, tech startups, software companies, people in this ecosystem. So we interview amazing founders. We have got an amazing founder, serial entrepreneur today, and very, very excited to introduce Matt Rogish. He is the co-founder of Kimball, but the website is getkimball.com. And this app is really cool, everyone. So basically, if you have an application and you have to figure out the functionality, usage of the functionality. Are my customers using functionality? And most of the time, as we all know this in the software business, a lot of features and functionality aren't used, right? So Matt is solving that problem, and he is a serial entrepreneur. I actually met him years ago, and he recently had an exit. So how great is that? Someone in the Philadelphia area that had an exit. Unbelievable. So Matt, it is great to have you on the show. It's great. We do an elbow pump, so we'll do like a virtual elbow pump here. Yeah. So great to have you on the show, Matt. And just tell the audience a little bit about your background, right? Just how did you even get into tech? What did you do before all of your, your prior company and this company? And then we'll get into what you're doing now.
Thanks, Mike. I appreciate it. Really honored to be here. I've seen your show, and you've got a lot of really great founders, and so I'm honored to be among them, even if I feel a little inadequate in that regard. But so my spouse is from Philly originally, but we met in DC, and I've been in startups pretty much my whole life. We moved to Philly to actually start my previous company in 2015 from New York. And I love it here. I can't imagine being anywhere else. Philly is a great city to be an entrepreneur in. It's a wonderful city to be a tech person in. And I'm super excited that we have this really great community here, especially with folks like you doing all the things you do with Philly Tech. Yeah. As I said, my background has been in technology basically my whole life. In high school and college, I interned at software companies, and always knew that I wanted to be an entrepreneur. That was just sort of in my DNA. I saw Bill Gates and Steve Jobs, growing up, and then Larry and Sergey at Google. And I said, I want to do that. And so after 5 or 6 startup runs I said, okay, I think I've learned enough about both the technology side of things and the business and startup side of things that I'm going to start my own thing. And so I started a company called Reactive Ops in 2015. And we were doing something called Kubernetes, which I'm sure you've heard of, or many of your audience may or may not have heard of, but it's this really cool infrastructure product that has taken the cloud and on-prem infrastructure world by storm. Mm-hmm. It is by far and large the most widely used container management system out there, orchestration system. And we built software and services and did some consulting around Kubernetes. And as you did mention, I sold that firm back in March of last year. Took the summer off for the first time, and nice. First time I took a vacation in probably 15 years, and started another company, as you mentioned, called Kimball in late last year. And my co-founder's here in Philly as well. And we are, as you mentioned, focused on how do we look at the way your customers are using your application. So you're probably a B2B SaaS company or an e-commerce company. How are people using your app? Where are they falling off? And are there any correlations between how they use your app and churn rates or dropout rates or things like that, with the goal of, hey, if you push people towards this feature, maybe you're going to make more money, or if you add this new feature or enhance it, you're going to make more money. Make sense?
Yeah, no, absolutely. So what's really cool, again, there are so many great founders and technologists in the Philadelphia region, and sometimes we don't get our just due because the Philadelphia region is a massive swath of region, right? I mean, it runs from Princeton, all the way out to eastern Pennsylvania. So, the one big thing, so so Matt is a proven quantity, right? So he has had an exit. He built his platform his last platform, Reactive Ops, on Kubernetes and DevOps. And now Kimball, right? So getkimball.com, he's building. Like what I see is he's building on that layer of success, took what he learned, and now he's building an actual software company, which is really exciting. So Reactive was more of a services company, had some software in there, but obviously Kimball, super exciting, bigger multiple. One of the things that he's really looking for is funding. So I don't think he's going to have any trouble getting funding. But so Matt, tell the audience a little bit about Kimball and the value proposition of Kimball. You know, what does it do in terms of like saving time, saving money, increasing productivity? Because we talked about that the other day.
Absolutely. So as you did mention, Kimball is a pure software company. We may have some services to help onboard you or customize it for your particular, integrations with something, but it is a software company. I don't want to do consulting anymore. Some people, they love it. It's not for me. So one thing that I've always had the problem with when I was CTO or technical co-founder or just programmer at startups we believed in this lean startup ethos of, build, measure, learn, trying to figure out, we want to build something that people want, as Paul Grant says.
Right.
So how do we do that? Well, we can talk to customers, but it's hard to do because customers, as Steve Jobs said, what did he say? If Henry Ford had asked people what they wanted, they'd want faster horses, right? Instead of the car. So there's only so much we can do by interviewing people, and the best way to figure out what people want is to actually show them something and see if they use it. Did their behavior, did their actions match their words? And so the Lean Startup came out, I don't remember how long ago that was, 2005, 2006. And great, yes, I want to do that. Right, like how do I do Lean Startup? Right. And how do I conduct experiments? Put buttons up and do false stores or do sort of experimentation in my product in order to figure out where I go next. And so our software helps do that. It's experiment. We call it feature management, which I'm not sure is a thing. If I coined it, great. Maybe it's out there, but it's feature management. Nice. So we go through. If you're a product manager, or a chief product officer, or a CEO of a scaling startup, that you have a certain amount of functionality and you want to know what to build next. Yeah. You have limited capacity in your engineering and product teams, and so you want to prioritize what to do next, and you have some hypotheses you want to test. I think if we add this button that we're going to see people pay us more money, or they're going to use it more, and that more engagement leads to less churn, therefore more AR or MR.
Yeah,
so our software drops into Kubernetes. We take advantage of Kubernetes, so it does require Kubernetes. And it provides the reporting and the analytics around feature usage and experiment management. So you can say, I think I have a hypothesis, this is going to increase retention by 2%. You do an experiment, we keep track of all the data, and we tell you whether or not that's true. And then we keep track of that over time to help you prove that. And we also start to provide, after we have enough data, ROI calculations. We can say this feature cost you $500,000, but it made you an extra $2 million this year. Isn't that great? Good team.
Yeah. So just for the novices out there, because Matt is really technical. For the novices out there, just think of Kubernetes as like a container that you essentially drop your application in, right? So you drop your application in this container, and then it tells you. So Matt's software tells you who's using these features, who's not using these features, right? And what I had mentioned to him is I'm on the front lines of a lot of software companies. So there's like over 500 software companies in Philly. I've got over 50 clients, and the big term that everybody's saying now is user experience. How do we dramatically improve the user experience, right? And I feel Matt's solution is right on the money on that, because today's environment, you have to have users, you have to have growth, and you have to have happy users. So Matt, we had talked about, so what do you feel, what is the ideal type of software company? So I know you're really early stage. What type of company are you looking for to beta, to trial, to look at your software?
Yeah, we are very early. Software takes time, and we are self-funded, and so we don't have a giant engineering team. It's just the two of us right now, but we've built what we think is a very solid MVP, and we are looking for people to start evaluating, kicking the tires, help us co-create this thing as we move forward. So the kinds of customers we're looking for are ones that are B2B SaaS firms, right, where your customers are paying you and you have a clear value proposition and you've achieved product market fit, because if you have two customers and you're early, there's only so much experimentation you could do with two customers. You need to have a certain critical mass of customers or users. Or e-commerce companies that have a certain amount of scale and are trying to experiment with, okay, if we add customers also liked at the bottom, like what does that do to average order quantities or things of that nature.
Right.
So we're looking for firms that are, tens of folks up to, low hundreds of folks to give us a try.
Yep.
We certainly view ourselves eventually as an enterprise software firm. It's not a SaaS thing where you download a thing and you pay us $10 a month. So eventually we'll be on the enterprise world, but as you know, enterprises have big giant problems and all sorts of interesting requirements, which are great, but requires a lot of product work to get there so we can fulfill all of their requirements. So we're starting off with the more or less the SMB software company, the B2B SaaS firm, and I think we can deliver a ton of value to them and continue to work with them for a very long time, and then grow our way into an enterprise play.
So great. So everyone, please come back in a few minutes, because again, we want to help people from our region, right? So software companies, right, that have a software product, they're making probably some revenue, right? That is the core sweet spot. Anybody that has a SaaS software product, right? So come on back in a few minutes. We're going to further talk about this market. We're going to talk about other things that Matt is looking for, and really talk about the future of this market. So come on back to Tech Talks in a few minutes. Thanks.
The session that we had with BCAP was really entertaining and enlightening. We were able to put together some very specific steps that we as individuals can take, and it was really fun to all come together and see sort of where we're going as a team and how we can all get there together.
We had a tremendous experience with the BCAP Partners. One of the challenges that we have as an organization is to make sure that we have the right people in the right chairs doing the right thing. To do that well, you have to have synergy. You can try to dream up ways to make sure that your group does that, or you can rely on experts. We would recommend BCAP Partners to anybody who's looking to take their organization to the next level.
Hi, everyone. Welcome back to Tech Talks. My name is Michael Bertoni, and I'm the founder and CEO of Philly Tech. And we are having a great conversation with Matt Rogish. He is the co-founder of Kimball, which is Get Kimball. This software is all about maximizing the functionality of your app, right? Making sure who's using things, who's not using things, right? And really driving that satisfaction, that customer satisfaction and revenue. So I was talking with Matt at the break and want to be laser focused on his goals, right? So he has goals, and what's amazing to me, Matt, when I talk to you, you had an exit, right? But you're like, customers, you're concerned about getting funding, right? I'm like, gosh, Matt, you could just do this, right? I mean, I know you could. So tell the audience about, again, your goals by the end of the year, right? By the end of December, what are your goals? And how do you think you're going to get there?
Yeah. So we're very early stage. And so part of our strategy at this point, we do want to be a venture-backed firm. We think that this has a venture scale outcome. Yeah. And so we are going to be pursuing investment. So we want to have, by the end of this year, 5 to 10 paying customers, or some mix of, you were with us at the beginning, we're going to give you a year free, some proof points that we can take to go out and raising a, is it seed, post-seed, early Series A sort of round. So we do have enough runway to take us through next year. But the venture, the VC firms tend to take some time off over the holidays, and so we want to get to a raise as quickly as we can by the end of this year or early next year. We want to have a lot of software built that delivers a ton of value to you, and I think a lot of Philly area companies absolutely can use what we have and grow their existing revenue base from their existing customers without needing to go find more. And so we're doing inbound, in terms of marketing and sales, writing the blog posts and participating in the community. We also do a lot of outbound. And in my last firm, we had a mix of inbound and outbound. And I know for some reason software founders tend to not quite value sales, but we value sales highly and have really seen that work. Obviously, with travel restrictions and other stuff, it was mostly inside sales, but we'll see what happens. See what happens next year.
Yeah. So I'm curious about your reason for. I mean, I'm sure you're talking to investors, right? I'm curious because there's this view sometimes on the East Coast that I don't know. You got to have all the parts and pieces, and you got to have customers, and you got to have revenue, and all that. So are you doing that on purpose, or are you like purposely waiting to get customers, or I'm curious to what your thought process is there.
Yeah. So I have been involved in startups that have raised, $2, $3, $4, $5 million pre-customer, pre-product, and that had some interesting outcomes. I think the challenge can be if you raise too much too quickly. You have such a big opportunity. It's almost like a paradox of choice, right? It's like, I have so much money, I can build whatever I want. Like, let's build the whole vision that we have, because we do have a, multi-year, multi-decade vision for where we want to go.
Right.
But, too much money almost would harm us more than not enough. And from a valuation perspective, I was in San Francisco and New York, last year, Q3, Q4. We had a baby in early this year, in early March. And so I said, okay, given the holidays, I'll pick back up in April. And of course, as we all know, not traveling anywhere, not going to San Francisco or New York, in March and April and May. So we said, all right, we have enough friends and family to give us a year or so of runway. So let's go ahead and start building this. And we will be better off from a product perspective if we can get ourselves to MVP without external financing. We can get those proof points and hopefully come out of this with a better valuation than maybe we would have had we gone to the markets today. Given that we're seeing a little bit of a softening in valuations, which I think they were pretty wild, last year.
Yeah.
And so they're probably from an investor perspective, I think they're coming back down to earth. And as a founder perspective, they're certainly super reasonable, but I think we can be better positioned to say, okay, we've got those proof points, we've got the software built, we've got the beginnings of a sales process, we've got the beginnings of marketing.
Right.
Now here's how we're going to take that $1 million and turn it into, to really scale. So we want to achieve a certain amount of product market fit, maybe not all of it, but a certain amount before we go to the markets. That's been our strategy so far. And I think, we'll see how that goes, but especially when the venture capital markets have been more or less frozen for the last couple of months, we didn't have much of a choice anyway.
Yeah, so one of the things I'm curious about is also Reactive, right? Your old company. So are there potential clients? Because now that my head is starting to wrap around what you're doing, it's any SaaS application, right? It doesn't have to necessarily just be a software company. Maybe your betas and trials will be software, but it could be an enterprise company, right, that just has a SaaS application, a large SaaS application that they're like, hey, I don't know why people aren't using this thing, right? So what is so by the end of the year, do you want to bring in, more of the SaaS companies that are looking at it, or if you found a mid-size or a larger company, would that be interesting as well?
Yeah, absolutely. My previous experience at both Reactive Ops and other firms was that the larger companies tend to have very strict requirements around, okay, if it doesn't do X, I can't use it. Yeah, it covers 95% of our use case, but there's this 5%, and we can't use it till it has that. And then everybody's 5%, or it's an 80-20, right? Everybody's 20 is different. And so it's very challenging as a small firm like ours to go, okay, cool, we'll take you on and we'll build this 20%. Or even if you could pay us to build this 20%, like now we need 3 engineers that are going to need to build that software. So the tricky part with that is to go up market, we need to just have more breadth, right? It's just more stuff, more features, more fine-grained stuff, whether it's HIPAA or PCI or things along those lines. And the mid-market folks tend to have further, they do certainly have requirements, but they're much more willing to be flexible to say, okay, if it could work this way, this would be great, but we'll wait, and we'll get it now and we'll see if you get there. Or we have a workaround if it doesn't do X, right? If it doesn't do PCI, that's fine. We're not PCI yet, but we will be in 6 months, right? And so will you have PCI, compliance in 6 months? Oh yeah, of course, right? So, it really depends on the right firm. If they have the right requirements that can fit ours and don't need 2 years of software development before we can get there, then absolutely. There's a lot of really great companies that I think could take advantage of this, because as the old adage goes, it's much easier to take an existing customer and grow their revenue than find a new one. Right. And that's basically what our software does. So it says you've already spent however much money, customer acquisition cost, to long-term value ratio, you've already spent all these dollars to acquire all these customers. They're giving you X when they're churning with Y. How can we get them to give you more or to churn less? And so it doesn't really require any cost on your perspective. From your perspective, it doesn't require any cash outlay to increase your revenue, to increase your bottom line. It just requires knowing what they're doing, understanding how that relates to what the value they're getting from your product, and our software will help you do that. And I think that's part of the missing piece in the market today. Is there's plenty of stuff that says, okay, we'll do a bunch of front-end marketing experiments around customer acquisition and what landing pages should we have, all that stuff. That's fine,
right?
But that's all cash out the door, right? You've got to go pay Google and Facebook and Twitter for all these ads, and you got to bounce people off of your website. That's fine, that should be done. But what do you do with everybody that's already using your app? You've already acquired them. How do we make them more profitable for you? How do we get them to churn less?
Yeah,
that's where our software comes in. And any company that has that problem, which ought to be all of them, of trying to get more from their existing customer base, especially now, we think would be a very good customer for us.
Yeah, I'm also interested to learn about your vision, because as I'm talking to you, as I'm learning more, there's obviously a big potential AI and machine learning component here. So this is all about data, right? The Kubernetes is seeing this data. So what, in terms of your product, what do you feel is the differentiation, right? Where's going to be, and I see that, like, I don't know if it's in that, but I'm curious if you're looking at AI and machine learning, and what do you feel is really going to be your differentiation over what other people are doing?
Right. So right now there's a lot of, if you're a SaaS company, if you're CFO, or you look at your monthly SaaS firms that you use to operate your business, it's a giant list, right? You've got all these firms you're paying, and they're all SaaS companies. You're sending bits of data to all these different providers, not only the cloud provider, but to do the marketing experiments, or to do Google Analytics, or whatever. All this data is flying around. It's going out to all these different SaaS providers, and there's good things for that. It's kind of pay as you go. Sometimes they have a free trial, but what are they doing with your data? How many emails do you get saying that there's been a breach from somewhere because somebody left, a port open or something? So our software runs within your Kubernetes cluster, within your infrastructure. And that's an interesting model. That's how we used to buy software, right? You would buy software, you pay X dollars for it, and you get it for a year, or you get support for a year.
The Kubernetes is like the machine.
Microsoft Office, or you've got some database that you did. And then with the internet and cloud, like, we switched to this pay-as-you-go SaaS model, but you stop paying, guess what? All those disappear. You don't have anything. And so what we said is, the interesting thing about Kubernetes, and I think this is going to be something that more and more people do, is that it's designed to deploy software into it super easily.
Right.
I mean, it's harder than that. That's why we had a whole company around it that we sold. But the point is that once you figure out how to use Kubernetes, you've got the right automation. It's relatively trivial to auto scale and deploy applications into it, whether it's your app or happens to be our app. It needs a database, and you're a cloud provider, so we've got a database, and it's got our software that runs within it. So we figured out how to deploy our software into your clusters securely, but it's super fast. And so all of the data stays local, never goes back to us. And the interesting thing is that costs you less money, because one thing that people don't pay attention to or notice until later is that the cloud providers charge you for what they call egress. When your app sends data out, that's typically a web page, right? Or it's whatever your customers are doing. So it's usually not a lot. But when you're using all these SaaS providers, you're sending all these bits of data out of your servers to theirs. Actually, your cloud provider charges you for that. So there's this invisible cost that you don't really know until you get your end of the month bill, and you see this big giant egress charge, and it's just this bucket of dollars and bits that you have no idea how to trace that back. So all that would go away if you're running this software on-prem like ours would. And the interesting thing is, from us as a business perspective, well, we lose out on how are you using this product. What interesting pieces can we glean from it? So for example, if you are an e-commerce provider and you have a competitive set of other people that look like you, other e-commerce providers, they added thumbs up, thumbs down, and they saw people used and bought more products. So how can I give that to you? How can I give that insight to you if I can't see what other people are doing, the experiments that they're running? So with AI and machine learning models, I can create a model that runs, again, in your environment, but that model has no competitive information. There's no identifying information there. And if you'd like, you can share that model with us, and then we will share other people's models with you. And so because of that, we can start to do predictive analytics to say, okay, you're an e-commerce company, other people have done this type of experiment and seen Y results. So we think, based on our understanding of you, that if you implement this feature, you should see an extra, increase in average order quantity and at your rates of parts checkout. That should make you an extra $1 million in profit this year. Why don't you go build that? Why don't you go try it?
Yeah.
And so by having a platform that both keeps your data local and safe, but we have a path to exfiltrate non-sensitive but super interesting information, I can then send that back to you in a secure way, much like Apple does.
Yeah. So really cool, everyone. So we got to wrap up. It's great, Matt, because I'm learning more and more. It's like, to me, obviously, if you're using Kubernetes and you're a SaaS company, I mean, you got a genius. You essentially have a genius over here with Kubernetes, like, that knows how to maximize Kubernetes, right? I mean, I'm thinking about all these. I'm looking at you now. I'm thinking about all these great things you could say, right, to somebody, because, in the SaaS company, you gotta, the CTO has to buy it, and the CTO is the technical guy, the VP engineer. He's the tech, so he's going to love what you're talking about. So we got to wrap up here. So, Matt, tell the audience where they could find you, your website. Again, Matt is trying to get 5 to 10 SaaS companies that probably use Kubernetes and probably are in e-commerce and B2B. All right, so Matt, go. Tell them where they could find you and where they could get on your website.
Absolutely. So I'm available pretty much everywhere at Matt Rogish, MatTrogish, MattRogish.com, Twitter /Matt Rogish, LinkedIn, Matt Rogish. Our corporate website is Kimball, KIMBALL.com. So it's sort of a goofy, it's a long story as to why we're Kimball, but getkimball.com, KIMBALL. And you can see what we're doing, you can see our offering, and you can submit a little web form that goes right to me that says, hey, I'd like to raise my hand and talk more about it. Put you on our Slack, we'll have a conversation around things, and we'll see if we can solve your problems with our software.
Great. So everybody, come on back to Tech Talks. Again, it's every Wednesday at 12:30 p.m. where we interview awesome founders, awesome people in the tech ecosystem. So thanks a lot for coming to my show, and see you next week.